Do you ever go out shopping and see something that is so totally you that you need to have it? That happened to me recently at a Half Price Books. I was out and about with my boyfriend window shopping just to have an excuse to get out of the house because it was the dead of winter and I was not feeling great about it. I passed the time lollygagging through the aisles while he scoured the DVDs for his next victims. There were a couple of good finds I saw that day, like the entirety of the Gossip Girl series and all 3 copies of Encyclopedia Eorzea. But I was broke as a joke at the time and had maybe $50 to my name until payday. And besides, I knew I'd always be able to find more copies of those things no matter what. So I passed on them. But then I found the most incredible book I'd ever laid my eyes on. I found her perched atop a row of haphazardly reshelved graphic novels, like a fair mermaid washed ashore by tempestuous waters, the calm and apologetic sun setting her pale frame aglow and warming her frigid body. Anyway, I'll be the first to admit that I'm a fan of reading self-indulgent trash, of which this book seemed to fit the bill. You know what else I'm also a fan of? A good deal. One look at the cover and another at the $3 price tag, and I knew I couldn't go another day without this novel. I'm a bit of a gamer girl myself. Hello Kitty Island Adventure is my favorite, but I also play Final Fantasy XIV, an MMO, just like the game that the main character Madeline does in this book. A small vocabulary lesson for those who may not know. Final Fantasy XIV and other games like it, think World of Warcraft, Wizards 101, RuneScape, are called MMORPGs. MMO, or massively multiplayer online games, refer to a type of game that operates in real time with other players from around the world. RPG stands for role-playing game, meaning that you play as a character in a fictitious world rich with lore or story details. You can stretch definitions and get pedantic about what makes a game an MMO and or an RPG, but that honestly makes my brain hurt, so I won't even try. Anyway, I expected to detest this book, honestly. I detest a lot of books. I think it's kind of fun picking things apart that don't ultimately matter. It's like one of those puzzle feeders, but for my brain. And yeah, at first I was snorting and rolling my eyes at this book, but eventually I reached a point of acceptance. Gamer Girl surprised me, and not in the totally awful and terrible and no good way I imagined it would. It actually wasn't half bad, and yeah, I have my gripes. I'll get to them later, don't you worry. But funnily enough, this novel was just what I didn't know I needed. So buckle in. We're only getting started. Grab some popcorn and experience this book as I did, because it was a lot of fun. Madeline's parents have recently divorced, and like any surly teenager, she blames her mother for this. I'll get more into that later. Anyway, because of the divorce, she and her mother and her little sister had to move from Boston to Farmingdale to live with their grandmother. I did some searching on this because Farmingdale seemed like a too on the nose name for some kind of suburb of Boston, but I thought that surely if Boston was a real location being used in the book, then Farmingdale would also be a real IRL place out there. Alas, there's no Farmingdale, Massachusetts from what I can tell, but there are Farmingdales in New York, New Jersey, and Maine. I never really got the impression that Madeline moved out of state though, so I was just kind of confused at that point. And I checked for Bostons in New York, New Jersey, and Maine as well. I found one in New York, but the drive from Boston to Farmingdale is a little over 7 hours and not the 1 hour specified in the book. The closest hit I got was Boston, Massachusetts to Framingham, which I honestly read as Farmingham before, so this kind of shoots my theory in the foot, but I'm going to follow through anyway, because I'm not a quitter. The two cities are 30 to 45 minutes away from each other, and maybe Mancusi has a little dyslexia like I did when I was trying to read this and when she was trying to plot out the setting in this book, or the whole thing is a work of fiction and I shouldn't be going in on it this hard. But if you're going to use iconic of a city as Boston by name, you should at least find another real life locale to make it all match, in my opinion. Or if I read like 2 more paragraphs, I would have seen that this was taking place in New Hampshire. There is neither a Boston nor a Farmingdale, New Hampshire, which again leads me to ask why we're choosing real life settings but fictitious towns within those real life states. I know that this is far from the only book to do this. I don't like it when it happens in other stories either, though. At that point, why even name a state? Why was that necessary? But moving on. Madeline's grandma is so not cool. She basically hoards unicorns. Ugh, can you imagine something so cringe? A grandmother collecting whimsical things relating to one specific animal. Can you imagine? Anyway, the first couple pages are mostly Madeline lamenting the fact that she had to uproot her idyllic life of private school in Dunkin' Donuts? Here we are again, mentioning real life things but not grounding this setting in any type of reality. This is going to haunt me through the rest of this book. I know it. Whatever. I'll just ignore it for now, I guess. She had to uproot her idyllic life of private school and Dunkin' Donuts and plant herself in, quote, the burbs with public school and school buses. I know I'm approaching this with a very adult lens. I recognize that to a teenager, this is a big deal. And yeah, developmentally, it makes sense. Beginning completely new routines with new people and all that can definitely wreak havoc on young minds. I'm not trying to discount that whatsoever, but it is a bit silly looking back on this kind of attitude at 27. What I wouldn't give for my biggest concern to be making new friends again. We are very quickly introduced to Madeline's friend Caitlin from back in Boston. They have a quick interaction full of teenisms that read more like satire at this point, but I know that back in 2008, this was the norm. During this conversation, we get an aside about Caitlin's mom. The TLDR is old hag gets divorced and makes being hyper independent and hating men her personality. I'm not a fan of it, but this was also 2008, so I guess that whole third wave white feminism thing was pretty new to the scene, and it was easier to mishandle by today's standards. But also this book reads like a total 2000s coming of age comedy, and you couldn't have comedy those days without dipping into caricature because screw nuance. It makes things too complicated, and we're here to have fun. The whole purpose of this, by the way, was for Madeline to have an excuse to maybe convince her recently divorced mom to let her have cool hair and piercings like Caitlin. I actually laughed at this one because it's such a canon event for lots of teenagers, this whole how can I make this about me mindset. Too bad a lot of people don't grow out of it though. Anyway, it's time for Madeline to go to school. Do you want to guess what she frolics down the stairs wearing? I love Hot Topic, and I buy all my clothes from there. For example, today I was wearing a black corset with matching lace around it and a black leather miniskirt, pink fishnets, and black combat boots. I was wearing black lipstick, white foundation, black eyeliner, and red eyeshadow. I was walking outside Hogwarts. Wait, that's not right. She was actually wearing a short plaid skirt paired with Doc Marten boots and a zip-up hoodie over her Puka the Goblin Cat baby tee. Whatever. Now, Gam Gam really doesn't like this, likening Madeline's appearance to that of a, quote, dead prostitute. Thanks, Gam Gam. She forces the teeny bopper to change into some mom jeans and a baggy sweatshirt with unicorns embroidered on the front. How embarrassing. I'm definitely going to keep repeating this, but I really love how much this book is a product of its own time. I mean, maybe I'm just out of touch with the youths or have a fully developed brain or have completely divorced myself from the concept of shame, but I'm fairly certain that if Miss Maddie threw on some chunky sneakers and a fanny pack with this outfit, she'd have become an instant fashion mogul if this novel took place today. As if being dressed in this tote scroty outfit wasn't enough, Madeline's grandma drives her to school and walks her inside where, of course, the most popular kids in school arrive. The writing in this scene is so on the nose, I swear it reads exactly how you'd expect it to. The sea of kids parted suddenly, almost diving out of the way. I looked down the newly formed path, raising my eyebrows. 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls, sauntered down the hallway in a way you usually only see in teen movies. It's really self-aware, huh? Heads high, shoulders back, self-satisfied smirks written across their perfect faces. They might as well have been wearing t-shirts with the word popular scrawled across the front. Who are they? I wondered aloud, forgetting Grandma for a moment. You must be new, a Buddy Holly / Elvis Costello lookalike to my right chuckled. The only kid I'd seen so far that even remotely stood out from the rest of the clones. That's Hannah Dustin High's Royal Court, Billy, Chad, Lucy, and Chelsea. In that order. They pretty much rule the school. That much was obvious, given the odd stares of the rest of the kids. I studied the 4 of them closer. Lucy wore a cheerleading outfit, no shock there. Chelsea, on the other hand, was channeling her inner Jackie O, dressed to impress with a pristine pink suit, complete with a requisite string of pearls and a dainty white clutch in her well-manicured hand. It should have looked old-fashioned, but the girl totally worked it. I turned my attention to the 2 boys. Billy was tanned, tall, and muscular. Good looking, your typical jock meathead really, wearing a Patriots jersey and camouflage pants. And Chad, my breath hitched as my eyes fell on Chad. He was tall too, but lean like a cat almost, carrying himself with the slinky grace of a model or movie star. He had curly blonde hair and piercing blue eyes, framed with long sooty lashes, a chiseled face with perfectly sculpted cheekbones and a full mouth that looked perfectly kissable. Naturally, the ensuing exchange between Madeline and the popular kids involves some sick roasts like, nice shirt, I think my 5-year-old sister has one just like it, and a shitty pun from Billy the jock about Madeline being corny. Of course, everyone laughs at this joke. The laughter is soon to turn on him, though, when Gam Gam recognizes Billy from when he was Billy the Jock the Kid and treats him accordingly, being sure to mention how he was still wetting the bed when he was, quote, 4 feet tall, which, according to a quick Google search, indicates that he would be between 6 and 8 years old. How embarrassing, am I right? On the topic of developmental delays, I do want to mention how Madeline's internal monologue has a flippant mention of people thinking she was, quote, special needs because of her outfit and her Gram Gram taking her inside. Obviously, this piece of absolute literature is a product of its time, and I don't know why I wasn't quite expecting it, but that phrase punched me in the jaw. Like, I was gobsmacked. Maybe I don't remember the books I read because I was a preteen, but I don't really recall any ableism being that overt. This was, of course, back in the age where edgy humor was king, so I'm not entirely surprised here, but I guess I figured the quiet part would have been whispered instead of broadcasted with a bullhorn from 2 feet away. I figured that if the uncomfortable humor was so in my face, it would stand to reason that maybe the kids would be mean. I mean, like, downright vicious, right? It would totally make sense. I was wrong. So Billy's all mad about Gam Gam telling the whole school about his bladder problems, yeah. And the best insult he could think of, or Mancusi could think of, for Madeline was freak girl. Freak girl. I mean, from a 2008 young teen girl lens, sure, I guess I'll buy it for now. Maybe being forged in the fires of Shane Dawson, Llamas with Hats, Most Popular Girls in School, etc. has desensitized me to a lot of bullying. But if I had been in Madeline's 15-year-old shoes, I would have laughed and called the guy brain dead or something before, like, flipping him off because I was so edgy and cool as a kid. Yeah, definitely cool, trust me. Anyway, when the dust settles and all the popular kids storm off, there's, of course, the fated exchange between Madeline and a different loser kid who's probably definitely not going to be some kind of love interest later on. Wow, way to make a first impression, said a voice to my right as the crowd dispersed. I looked over to see the Elvis Costello boy on my right. He wore a black turtleneck, dark blue jeans, and thick black glasses over his brown eyes. Very hipster nerd chic. I'm Matt, he said, holding out a hand. And you, Maddie, have just embarrassed the most powerful kid in school. I didn't say anything, I protested weakly, knowing that it didn't matter. It's really not about you, you know. Those guys hate pretty much everyone not in their immediate social circle, and that means 95% of the school. Funny when you consider the same 95% loves them and worships the ground they walk on. Well, not me. Count me in for hating the haters. Thank you very much. Not even the main character of the story could come up with any decent comeback. The haters? Boo. Madeline's day kept getting worse, believe it or not. As if being called freak girl wasn't bad enough, she also couldn't use her phone or leave campus. I know that character-wise, she isn't used to being told no or whatever. I know that I've only ever been to public school, so I can't actually imagine that phone use would be allowed in a private school either. And I know Mancusi's writing was probably most likely informed by Gossip Girl or The Clique or Mean Girls or something, but this is really where the book started to feel like a satire of itself, and I kind of loved it. Maddie gets home, moody as all get out naturally. Her mom wants to have a nice conversation about her first day. Scorn-teen gives a sassy response before trudging up the stairs and locking herself in her room. We've all seen a movie or two with this exact scene. All it's missing is a "no, Dad, this is your dream" sequence, but there are still 200 pages left to go, so there's a lot of opportunity for that. In her room, Madeline calls her friend Caitlin, who's having a blast without her at the ice cream shop. So much of a blast that she cuts the convo short, asking if she can call back another time before later gatoring her way out of the poor Enemy Darkness Dementia Ravenway's life. After this, Maddie's mom comes into her room and they have a little unproductive conversation. "I'm sorry, honey, it won't happen again." "You don't get it, Mom, my life is ruined." "It's probably not that bad." "Yes, it is." "Well, what do you want me to do about it?" "Let me go back to my old life that you totally ruined." "I can't afford the tuition, I'm sorry." "Fine, whatever, I'm tired." I'm not gonna lie, I don't think anything could have prepared me for the line, "Go ruin someone else's life for a while." My mom was pretty strict, and I didn't really think to challenge these boundaries too often, so maybe this is how daughters speak to their mothers, but I actually doubt that. Really, how many daughters have told their moms they hate them? I'm sure that the number isn't 0, but surely the media has made it seem like the norm, right? Let me know. Anyway, Mom leaves the room obviously hurt because what the hell was that? And Maddie pulls out her sketchbook. She draws manga, y'all. She's so nerdy yet cultured in a way that's palatable to the average reader, but so not cool to the quote Aber zombies at Hannah Dustin. I shouldn't be too facetious about this. I know that back in high school, the weeaboos were all kind of shunned by the greater public. Around these parts, they found their people with the theater and band kids. The choir kids, maybe not so much. I don't remember the specifics. I don't recall every single detail about my teenage years, crazy. crazy. I know a lot of people claim that there was no social hierarchy at their schools and that everyone got along or at the very least tolerated each other. And maybe that was really the case at their schools. But there was definitely a hierarchy at mine. It wasn't necessarily stuck-up, snobby rich kids versus everyone else. Those kids went to the white flight schools that popped up when my high school enrolled too many minorities for the white parents' taste. But there was definitely a rumor mill. I think some groups of friends tried to start an Instagram page that would let people submit confessions about other people, but it was just straight up cyberbullying. They kind of messed up big time by going after themselves first, though. It kind of makes it obvious at that point. A little too conspicuous to those with a more developed brain. It was shut down pretty quickly, but God, there was definitely a problem at that place. I know that nowadays cringe culture is dead or whatever, but I'm definitely not qualified to speak to the validity of that since I haven't set foot in a high school since graduating almost 10 years ago. Anyway, yes, Madeline is a weeb, and she draws anime, and in her comics, she's the epic hero who gets back at the big bad bullies, that type of cliched teen angst stuff. Girl really could have just used a therapist, but hey, whatever gets the young minds through it, right? I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a questionable coping mechanism back in high school, and mine wasn't nearly as private. Instead, I broadcast every thought I had on every social media platform for attention like a true teenager. Chapter 3 opens up with a time skip to Madeline's 16th birthday where she's opening a gift from her father. Final Fantasy XI. Fields of Fantasy. The father includes a note in the package that really reads like an ad more than it does a letter from father to daughter. Dear Maddie, okay, kiddo, I promised you the game, and here it is. Once you create a character, we can play together. This way, even though we don't live in the same house anymore, we can still hang out virtually whenever we want. So go ahead. What are you waiting for? Install the game on your computer and meet me in Fields of Fantasy. Love, Dad, aka Rockstar Bob. Madeline, excited to get started with the game and connect with her father, is told she has 10 minutes to do so before it's time for cake. Somehow, in those 10 minutes, she manages to download the game from a CD, make an account, create her character, log in, and chat with her dad. Ignoring the literal impossibility of it all, we start to get a further glimpse into this theme of escapism. Madeline wishes that her smoke show of an elf could go to school in her place so that all the boys would drool over her and not bully her, conveniently without realizing that every girl in the school would resent her for it, but misogyny seems to be a little too nuanced of a conversation for a book like this, or for 16-year-olds in general. I remember my teen years, the internalized misogyny was rampant. Naturally, Mr. Rockstar Bob doesn't have time for his kid. He's too busy being Leroy Jenkins. They have a short chat, and after the excuse of, actually, I'm in a dungeon right now, I pinky promise we can meet up another day, it's time for cake, and Madeline has to log off. Listen, I know the nature of MMOs. I know you can't just pause a dungeon or a trial or a raid or a cutscene, and maybe I'm just me and care too much about human connection, especially with family, but if I'd been in his shoes, I would have dropped anything to spend time with my daughter. It's at this point I started to wonder if he's not seeing her or visiting her due to laziness. As an adult, there's definitely a reason that Madeline's mom divorced her father, and I'm no stranger to deadbeat men with no aspirations, those kinds of men who just exist as life happens around them, as if they aren't an active participant in their own existence. It's weird. It's creepy. I could never imagine life like that. In the next chapter, we're back to reality. Madeline's in English, and the poor teacher is trying to engage the students in a discussion about Romeo and Juliet. Why is it always Romeo and Juliet? Be different. Choose literally anything else. A sonnet, a different author, even. I know that reading Romeo and Juliet is a canon experience for every high schooler in the US, but Jesus, I am so over it. Anyway, the students aren't responsive, of course, and Madeline knows the answers, of course, but she won't raise her hand, of course, because she'll look like a total loser who cares about school, of course. Instead, she's doodling in her notes. Apparently, over the course of the past month, the popular kids have made Madeline's life a living hell by doing popular kid shit. Knocking over her lunch tray, aiming spitballs at her, gluing her locker shut, stealing her gym clothes and tossing them into the toilet. Now, the last couple are actually kind of mean, and actually not something I've seen a bunch in teen coming-of-age media, so kudos, Marie, I guess. They still call her Freak Girl, though. Maybe workshop that one a little bit more. Anyway, Billy the kid throws a piece of paper onto her desk. She opens it. Someone drew a vampire girl that was obviously supposed to be her because Freak Girl was written in huge letters alongside it, I guess. Yeah, being called names sucks, and being called names at 16 is like the worst thing to happen ever, totally. But a vampire girl drawing? That's supposed to be mean how, exactly? They could have drawn some rendition of her with fried-looking hair, maybe drawn her fat or something, since it's the worst thing a teenage girl can be. They didn't even draw stink lines around her or anything. No acne marks, just a vampire freak girl. Get creative, come on. This was during the rise of Twilight too, probably just before the movie came out, so vampires weren't exactly uncool aside from the fact that teenage girls liked the franchise. But sure, I'll believe that poorly drawing someone as a vampire is bullying. Just for you, Marie Mancusi. Of course, Miss Teacher gets involved. Did he throw this at you in front of the whole class? I don't know, just leave me alone. Oh my god, this bullying is gonna get so much worse. And of course, the kid from that earlier scene in the hallway pipes up. Yeah, I know who did it. It was Billy. What a narc, am I right? Billy calls him a dork, which I guess is also supposed to be demeaning. I don't know, I just feel like in 2008, those kinds of terms had like no power anymore. Usually that kind of stuff was met with, wow, can you not think of anything better? Get better material. The go-to insults were gay or something like that. Obviously, you can only go so far in a book for youths, I guess, but I'm sorry. Reading this back after finishing the book is really hilarious, actually, because it gets worse, but not in the way you would imagine. Anyway, the go-to insults were gay or something like that. Obviously, you can only go so far in a book for youths, I guess, but after that special needs remark earlier on, I don't think that would have been too out there to use. I'm just saying. The teacher tells Billy to go to the principal's office or whatever right before the bell rings. Of course, Miss Teacher is all, Madeline, I need to speak with you before you leave. And Billy the bully boy shoulders the freak girl on the way out, causing her to drop her school-issued copy of the only Shakespearean play of all time and stepping on it. Cool, I guess. Disrespecting school property to own the libs. I guess. He threatens her as if she did anything other than try to protect his ass from getting in trouble. Not that I'd expect a teenage boy to understand that IRL anyway. This aspect of the scene gets a pass, but only this aspect because it's almost too realistic. Miss Teacher tries to bring levity to the situation by making fun of Billy's artistry. Madeline agrees, and so Miss Teacher uses this opportunity to get weirdly personal. Yeah, so Mr. Teacher was talking about these sketches you did for him in art class. I'd love to see some more of your art sometime. I love manga. But really, it's a farce to have a deeper conversation about how she knows how hard being the new kid is. She offers to be there for Madeline, saying that, quote, whatever you say to me stays here. She assures the girl that she won't blab to her parents or the principal. She's just a friend. She's definitely not a mandated reporter or anything. This definitely won't come back to bite Ebony Darkness Dementia Raven Way on the ass. Surely not. This actually never it never gets that dark. Unfortunately, I thought it would, but it didn't. Madeline's embarrassed, clearly, and just kind of nods and agrees so she can get to her next class, all the while marinating on the thought that a grown-up could never understand her. No one could ever understand her. As if no teen has ever had to deal with divorced parents, moving schools, or being bullied. I don't expect her to realize that, though. I definitely didn't, so I can't really judge. Later in the week, Madeline's drawing her anime in the lunchroom, and this scene plays out almost exactly how you'd expect it to, almost because, shockingly, this main character isn't a perfect victim. The haters approach her, making fun of her art, and play keep away after Billy snatches it up. Of course, the poor girl has to mention how he'll smudge it, which means he has to smudge it intentionally. I don't really get why she was using paint for manga in the first place. Maybe that's a high school thing. I was never really the artsy type. I know that manga uses screen tones, which are like stickers that you cut into shapes to shade the manga in certain ways. And it's way less messy than paint. But also, I don't know how accessible those were back in the early 2000s. I know that today, though, you can order them somewhere, like literally anywhere, and have them shipped to your front door within the week. But still, paint? Of all things, she chose paint. Sure, I'll go with it. So she punches Billy in the face anyway, and the totally cool and dreamy Chad is a totally cool and dreamy bystander, and yet she still has a crush on him. The lunch duty teacher, who happens to be Billy's basketball coach, by the way, makes her go to the principal's office because, of course, a teacher is also a sports coach in a U.S. public school. She bumps into Matt, the kid, literally in the hallway, and they have a small conversation as they're both picking up her books and drawings and such. Madeline reveals that she draws her own manga for fun. Matt reveals he knows what manga is actually and reads comics, and even though it isn't manga, they're basically almost the same thing, right? Matt's friend, Luke, enters the scene to drag the hipster kid to the library. Apparently, he'd hacked into the mainframe or something and bypassed the school's firewall, so the two were off to play some video games. This intrigues Madeline a lot, as she's a total gamer girl now after having played Field of Fantasy for like 10 minutes that one time. At least she acknowledges it, but the way in which she does so. Wow. Comic books and video games. Matt and I had a lot in common. I considered telling him about my Fields of Fantasy adventures, but I was such a gamer noob, I probably sounded totally poserish to real gamers like him and Luke. As the two buddies walk away, we get this gem. Matt was a nice guy, not boyfriend material exactly, but definitely a new friend. Rip in peace to all the Mets in the world. No, but seriously, I was also pretty boy crazy as a teen, but this was wild to me. And I know that this is just some really clumsy foreshadowing, probably, but God, imagine having that thought process every time you meet a guy. That sounds exhausting, and it was when I was younger. Madeline brings her detention slip home, and the exchange between her and her mother hits a little too close to home, honestly. I remember being a teeny bopper who hated the world, who didn't think anyone would understand. What I didn't realize, though, was that no one understood because no one knew what was going on. I was so caught up in my own thoughts and experiences, and I guess somewhere along the line, I'd assumed that other people could tell what was going on anyway. It's such a paradox, isn't it? No one understands, but also everyone knows, even though I haven't said anything. I wouldn't say I'm on the mom's side here necessarily. Obviously, a better parent would see something's up and ask questions or otherwise be curious about her daughter's life. But based on what she knows about Madeline's new school experience, which is nothing, it makes sense that she'd be that way. It doesn't make it any less invalidating and difficult, but it's not exactly unrealistic. Look at me, analyzing this interaction as if it was real. Anyway, she storms upstairs upset and logs into totally not Final Fantasy XI to wait for her dad to log in because it's Friday at 5 p.m., exactly when he said he'd meet her the last time they interacted. Any guesses on what happens? Not that. Her dad forgets about her, gets caught up at work or something, and doesn't log on. He couldn't perhaps call or text his daughter about his change of plans, of course. I'm not shocked, not only because this book is cliche after cliche after cliche, but because that's what divorced dads do. There's a reason their wife leaves them. Insert obligatory not all men acknowledgement here, I guess. She feels sorry for herself and almost logs off before deciding that she'd totally try to impress him once he decides to show up by leveling up. Notice me, Dad Pie. She, of course, ignores the warning that she's entering an area too high level for her character, and she dies. She resurrects and dies again, and resurrects and dies. But she wasn't to despair for too long. Another player, Sir Leo, arrives on the scene and totally takes care of those big evil wolves. Don't worry, I got 'em. Thanks. They were killing me over and over again. LOL. I bet they're level 5, you're level 1. Not exactly a fair fight. Yeah, I guess not. You shouldn't even be out here in this area at your level. Didn't the guards warn you? They might have, but I kind of ignored them. That explains it then. First day playing Fields of Fantasy? Yeah, that obvious, huh? It's okay. You're just lucky I was around to save you. Totally. Thank you so much. So do you want me to show you where you should go? Where the mobs are a bit more your level? Mobs? You really are a noob, huh? Mobs are like monsters. You get quests from the townspeople to fight them and earn experience and treasure. Ah, cool. Sorry. My dad got me this game and he said he'd show me how to play, but I don't know where he is. He was supposed to sign on like an hour ago. Typical dad, huh? Well, I can show you if you want. This way, when he logs on, you'll be totally 1337. 1337? Like elite, short for elite. LOL. Sorry. I try to take it easy on you since it's your first day, but don't worry. You'll be a gamer girl in no time. Thank you. I appreciate that. One rule though. Don't think this is dorky, but if we're going to adventure together, we've got to roleplay. The moment he mentioned roleplaying, the moment I read they, quote, had to, I knew this was either going to be Chad or Matt. If Chad, Madeline would probably have some kind of IRL slip up where there would be some kind of blow up point where she spills all his embarrassing chats with the student body. If Matt, she'd slowly develop a crush for the guy behind the character, learn it's Matt, which would then trigger the third act betrayal and eventual makeup in the last 3 or 4 chapters. Admittedly, there was a smaller, more messed up version of me that was waiting for this guy to actually be her own father, but I figured that was a little too Lifetime for this kind of book. I can't ignore the fact that the foreshadowing in this book is terrible, for me, I guess. I've always been one to notice patterns and catch on to them really quickly, so maybe I'm just too elite for this YA stuff, but quote, I'd never meet Sir Leo in real life. He probably lived across the country, maybe even across the world, unquote. May as well have just read, hey, she knows this guy IRL. Stick around to find out who. Eventually, Madeline's mom comes into her room to have a chat. She'd been calling for her from downstairs for a while, but Freak Girl was too busy playing her Freak Girl game to hear her or something. Typical gamer girl stuff, right? On the real, that's happened to me a few times. Those noise canceling headsets are actually no joke. So her mom comes in and tells her that they need to talk to turn off the game. Of course, Madeline's like, Mom, I can't do that, which is true for those of you who don't play MMOs. Live play can't be paused, and despite what some players may make you believe, stepping away from the computer is okay. Usually, a heads up in chat is more than enough, but gamer noobs definitely don't know this, especially young ones with no impulse control. Mommy Dearest, how dare she try to connect with her daughter, honestly, shuts off the computer, causing Sir Leo to basically die, and as we all know, if you die in the game, you die in real life. Can we get taps in here? There's a small back and forth that boils down to do as I say or you won't be able to play the game ever again. Typical parent stuff. Icky, am I right? Fellow gamers. Again, there's a conversation that hits just a little too close to home. This mother is adamant that Madeline's attitude just sucks and that she can't make friends by being mad at her father, which, fair, but also way to antagonize your daughter, dude. Maybe next time you could ask her what's going on rather than accusing her of just being negative. She's obviously going for Mother of the Year award because when Madeline finally opens up a little about what happened at school with all the bullies saying they all think I'm a freak, she immediately attributes it to the way her daughter dresses. I know it seems like I'm taking this exchange personally because I am. I hated every second of this. And for some reason, we all know the reason, let's be real, I felt like I'd regress to my teenage self, mad at the world and my mom. I was almost getting a little indignant about it myself. I know I give this book a lot of crap and everything, but man, if Mancusi doesn't know how to twist the knife once it manages to stab you. Anyway, at this point, the detention timeline is really messing me up. She punches Billy the Kid and gets a detention slip on Friday, the same day her father stands her up. The start of the next chapter reveals she received 3 days of detention and also had one of those detention days on a Friday. It doesn't seem like this narrative skips around in the timeline whatsoever, so having a flashback chapter doesn't seem likely. I was a good kid in school, so I was never sure of the exact process regarding detentions, but I'm going to assume that the day she brought the detention slip home was not a day that she actually served detention. I can see it being a process of acknowledgement plus an opportunity for parents to arrange transportation for their ne'er-do-well children. So if that's the case, and these are different Fridays, and Madeline has 3 days of detention, does that mean her detention started the next Friday, a whole week after it was issued? Did it start that following Wednesday? I'd imagine that her detention days would have been Monday through Wednesday. Regardless, this wasn't explained well. Totally threw me off. 0 out of 10, write better. So during this detention time, Madeline's approached by Chad. He comes to give her back her drawing that Billy had ruined. She gets a little sassy, asking what she'd want it for, and he explains that she could probably make a copy so that it wouldn't be a total wash. How thoughtful. He apologizes for Billy. She asks why he hangs out with him. He explains that they've been friends since childhood, that whole thing. Whatever. Grow some morals, kid, and a spine with it to stick to them. It's at this moment that Madeline realizes that she kind of fell into that same pit with Caitlin. In a way, they both bullied the normies, but at least Madeline felt bad about it like Chad does. Wow, they're so similar. They should go out. When Chad doesn't immediately hightail out of her vicinity, the suspicious Ebony Darkness learns from him that there's a manga/graphic novel contest. The winner would receive not only a publication of their work, but also $10,000. Prediction: you have to be 18 to enter, but Madeline doesn't realize that, wins the prize, but when they verify she's a minor, the offer is rescinded with a back pat and a better get oh my god, and a get good scrub. Chad's about to tell her that her elf drawing reminds him of something, but Billy the Bully calls him from the hallway to go somewhere, probably practice or something, I don't know. So off he goes. At this point, I really started to think that Chad was a red herring and that Matt was Sir Leo. These little slip-ups were just too perfectly placed for me to believe otherwise. Something I thought would be really interesting was some kind of third act mix-up where Madeline comes on to Chad believing he's Sir Leo, Matt gets mad about it and goes on some kind of nice guy rant, and Maddie totally rejects that because of his piss-poor attitude instead of ending up with the underdog as I believed would happen at this point in the novel. But considering the total lack of nuance and insight that has been displayed thus far, I highly doubted that would happen. It would have been so juicy though, and a refreshing take on the teenage romance story, but there's a lot of story left. Who knows? Anyway, Madeline's sister is having a slumber party when she gets home. In true teenage fashion, she hates the little twerps. The little twerps hate her back. Her little sister gives her a major attitude, and the little ones make it apparent that they too think she's some kind of freak girl. Damn. For some reason, these 8-year-olds are also focused on dating, asking each other who'd take one for the team on Maddie's behalf. One of them suggests Dracula, another Frankenstein. There's a small, tiny little comment that enforces the distinction between Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster. At least it was more underhanded open-ended than most themes in this book, so I'll give Mancusi that. Madeline goes upstairs to play Fields of Fantasy, but in the most Madeline way you can imagine. I entered my room, shut my door, and turned up my stereo, blasting My Chemical Romance's The Black Parade album. I'd heard it a gazillion times, but I still loved Gerard's passionate voice. It was as if he totally understood all my pain. If only he went to Hannah Dustin, we'd be soulmates for sure. The first thing she does is try to send Sir Leo a message, but he's not online, nor is her father. Sad face. She gets the sadness out of her system by totally poning those wolves that killed her the week before. Bully behavior, honestly. I wonder if that thread will continue through the novel. Probably not. Sir Leo finally appears and congratulates her on defeating the mongrels. Well done, milady. I see that the wolves are no longer a trouble to thee. Why, yes, I have been busy learning some powerful new spells to combat the evil wolves that once caused me so much pain. I am impressed. Perhaps you would care to join me on a further adventure? There's a small dragon in yonder cave that has been hoarding much treasure. We could slay it and then split the reward. That sounds like a most excellent plan. By the way, I'm sorry about last night. Mom switched off my computer before I could stop her. So annoying. I was wondering what happened to you. I was worried that I'd been boring you to death and you faked a disconnect in order to get rid of me. LOL, I've got better manners than that. So what, you'd just tell me I was totally boring and I should go away? Don't be totally boring and you'll never find out. LOL. I will do my best. Wow, I was flirting. Actually flirting. It wasn't actually so hard to do, safe at home with a sexy elf as my cover. In real life, I'd never be able to talk to a boy like that, but since Sir Leo probably lived on the other side of the country, I had nothing to lose. Follow me, my fair and beautiful maiden, and I shall lead thee to thy quest. I blushed a little at his words. Take that, little tiny children downstairs. Madeline totally has a date online with a stranger that she's never met before. And it even gets a little spicy. When it was finally time to log off and say goodnight, we'd gone into the Elf Tree Inn. There was only one bed, so Sir Leo gallantly offered it to me and said he would sleep on the floor, just like a real chivalrous knight. He even blew me a kiss right before he logged off, which, let's just say, got my real-life heartbeat up quite a bit. I knew we were just role-playing and that he was keeping in character, but I liked how he flirted back with me all the same. What if he knew how different I looked in real life? Would he be totally turned off? Probably. Which made me kind of sad, actually. I wanted him to like me for the real me, not some fako virtual character, but that was stupid and unrealistic. I had to take this for what it was and not get too attached. Girl, you'd be better off actually dating a horror beyond our comprehension at this rate. Please be serious. I can't be too hard on her. I myself have unfortunately dated a good few people from Final Fantasy, most of them just by accident, really. I learned a lot of lessons from those, not only about other people, but about myself as well. Having had experiences like those, I feel really, really bad for Madeline. Anyway, she stays up way too late playing this game and chatting with her internet crush and meets a rude awakening early the next morning when her father comes to pick her up and her sister as well to spend the weekend together. Do not forget that she has a sister like Mancusi has done and that I just did. I'm so sorry to all the little sisters of the world. That must be terrible. The exchange between the parents is rough, of course. Little Emily suggests they all go out for pancakes. The father, Bob, seems warm to the idea, but the mother, who we now learn is named Denise, refuses. They go off and have an adult talk. Emily expresses a small amount of hope for their mom coming along. Madeline absolutely wrecks that and probably forms a core memory for that poor girl because she feels like it, I guess. They get back to their father's apartment and Maddie rings up Caitlin, who answers for the first time in a month to 6 weeks or something. No idea. Madeline catches her friend up to speed on her life. Hey, I punched a guy. Normal stuff. She invites Caitlin to hang out while she's in town, only to learn that she's going snowboarding with the new school snowboarding club that Maddie's crush Avid would be attending. That floozy. Apparently all her old friends were part of this club too, and poor Madeline didn't even get a courtesy invite. After the short phone conversation, Madeline starts working a little on her manga when her dad checks in on her. He applauds her artistry and she thanks him for the game, going so far as to bring up the guy who's been showing her the ropes. I'm glad to say that sets off alarm bells in Mr. Bob said, and he suggests they should have a talk about internet safety. Maddie rolls her eyes because being raised in the early aughts means being force-fed every internet safety PSA ever, and clearly she knows better. Just like how I knew better and wound up getting groomed by multiple men. But anyway, Madeline and Bobby Boy go play Fields of Fantasy together because he's a cool dad who has 2 computers. Poor Emily is left to fend for herself all day. And this is where everyone needs to realize that maybe there was more to the parents' divorce than Madeline thinks. She doesn't see that though, of course. As the father and daughter duo play Fields of Fantasy, another character named Lady Adriana approaches and blows Papa a big ol' kiss. Ooh la la. She complains about her ex-husband, how he's apparently giving her trouble, whatever that means, and says something that would personally send me into a damn tailspin. Hey, Bob, what are you up to? Nothing much. How are you? Meh. My ex-husband's giving me trouble again. But what else is new? Rockstar Bob gently pats Lady Adriana. Aw, poor you. Thought you'd be stuck with the brats today. Isn't it your turn? Brats? Are you kidding me? This line specifically made me feel so heated on behalf of not only the kids, but their mother too. Maybe it's just because I'm a child of divorce and found my mom's diary once that detailed all the crap my father put her through, but this kind of behavior hits a soft spot for me. And it's not just that she called them brats, it's that she felt so comfortable calling them that around their father. It makes me wonder what exactly his behavior is when they're not present. In what way does this loser talk about his children that would allow another woman to feel comfortable enough to call them brats? Children this guy allegedly loves, by the way. Listen, I know I'm ragging on this story a lot, but there are these little nuggets of the story that make me feel something, and that is indicative of some damn good writing on Mancusi's part. I think we're similar authors in a way. I love to write characters. I've always been a character writer. I love doing it because of moments like these. God, I love a good villain. Anyway, after being a total ass, Lady Adriana invites Madeline's father to do some raiding. Of course, the man-child that he is really wants to do that. Too bad his daughter wants to play with him. Madeline, now self-conscious about being deemed a brat, says it's okay for him to go off and do his raiding stuff. Honestly, what a little piece of... Again, maybe it's just the kind of person I am. I understand that not all MMOs are like the one I play. I get that some events are limited time or have stupid long cooldowns, but this guy said he would play with his daughter. This was supposed to be a way for the two to bond and grow closer despite the physical distance as a result of the divorce. And now he's just pooping all over it. All over it. I wouldn't pass up the chance to spend time with my family. I don't care what raids or special events are happening. Hell, I've made a handful of new characters just so I can play with buddies of mine who'd recently started playing. I know not every MMO lets you do that, but even if Final Fantasy XIV didn't, I'd still keep them in-game company. Playing a multiplayer game alone freaking sucks, especially when everyone's way more experienced than you are. So Madeline's about to log off when Sir Leo comes online and messages her. Yay! Talk about a knight in shining armor, am I right? Yay, you're online. I was hoping you would be. Woot! So glad you're here. Do you want to go quest? Of course. How's your day going? Good. Just got out of drama practice. Wait. Drama practice? No, that tracks, actually. A role player with a flair for the dramatic, obsessed with escapism? Yeah. No, that tracks. So the two lovebirds go questing, and Dad's there, doing his own thing. And naturally, Madeline's grateful that he's not moderating her time online like her mother does. I get it. That's a natural part of every teen's experience. But as a full-fledged adult, I'm on Mom's side for this one. When Dad and his rude lady friend are done raiding, they group up with Madeline and the mystery man. They start questing together. For a moment, it's kind of wholesome, but just for a moment. Eventually, the deadbeat asks if his daughter wants to break for dinner or order pizza. Of course, the answer is pizza. Don't get me wrong. I love pizza. It is my favorite food. And I understand wanting a nice, easy dinner that you don't have to cook while you're having fun doing something else. But this dude has pizza on speed dial. This isn't just a one-off thing like it should be. This is a health concern. This is bad, as in not good, as in this man is showing symptoms of actual addiction to this game. And if he's got the gene, poor Madeline. And, of course, this guy pisses me off again. Remember Emily, Madeline's younger sister, bro's other daughter? Well, he didn't. So when she pipes up from the couch that she wants chicken tenders and french fries, this sack of crap rolls his eyes. She's 8. Madeline and Dad wink at each other and giggle together. Nothing like bonding over the ostracization of another family member, am I right? God, I can't remember the last time I wanted to swing on a character so bad. Listen, I know that some families are like that and that bullying is their love language or whatever. I personally can't stand that. We live in a time where vulnerability and softness is looked down upon. We as people have become so emotionally unavailable to everyone else that we've started becoming emotionally unavailable to ourselves. We're afraid of being rejected from the groups of people we wish to belong to, so we pretend to not be people. It's sad. Anyway, the gamers play Fields of Fantasy until midnight. Shockingly, the dad actually somewhat enforces a bedtime. I mean, it's late, but still. I was a little shocked about that. I was expecting him to go carry poor little Emily to bed and then stay up until sunrise playing with Madeline. Bro is multifaceted and nuanced, I guess. As she's saying goodnight to her boyfriend, well, it's late. Dad says I have to go to bed. Yeah, wow. I didn't even realize it was midnight. I know. Time flies when you're having fun. Sir Leo smiles. I had a lot of fun. You're great to play with. Alora blushes. Thanks. You're fun to play with yourself. Sorry. I was just, well, it's weird to play with you so much and not know anything about you. I mean, I know you probably live on the East Coast because we're in the same time zone, but besides that, yeah, it is weird. I feel like I know you really, really well, and yet not at all. Yes, that's crazy. At least tell me where you live. Total groomer vibes, right? But Madeline stays strong and remembers the lesson her father taught her. Dad comes back in the room to check on Madeline. She's embarrassed, minimizes the game so he won't see. And then in that very brief exchange, Sir Leo pulls the most chronically online self-conscious male move of all time. Sorry, I shouldn't have even asked. My bad. It's just, well, I think you're really cool. And I know you probably still live 1,000 miles away and would never want to anyway, but I just can't help thinking how awesome it'd be to meet you in real life. I can't believe I just typed that. Never mind. Forget I said anything. This is stupid. You're probably not even a real girl or something. I mean, not that I don't believe you or anything. Sorry, that came out wrong. Hello? Are you there? Great. I probably scared you off. I'm sorry. Sir Leo sighs. Well, good night. It was fun playing with you. Sweet dreams. Sir Leo logs off. It's more excusable because he's a teenager and all, but those lines sent me back to every online relationship with an adult male I've ever had. I felt like I had to take a long shower after reading that. Poor Madeline, being guilt-tripped at such a young age. The rest of the weekend was more of the same until Sunday when little Emily decided to put her foot down and make herself heard. You go, icon. So Dad takes them to the movie theater with contraband in hand, some outside drinks, and a kid's ticket for Madeline. I can justify skipping concessions, but saving a couple bucks on a ticket is where I draw the line. There was a line here that stuck out to me. Quote, I think he liked the idea of feeling like he was getting away with something, in reference to Madeline's father. That's it. He cheated on his wife with Lady Adriana. You can't convince me otherwise. I don't care if you agree, cry about it. It was also at this moment where Madeline first admits to herself that maybe her mom had been onto something regarding the divorce. The three of them spent the day theater hopping and abusing the free popcorn refills before going home, where the girls were met with a lovely home-cooked dinner that they were too full to eat. The father tells their mom that they totally went to Super Salad or something before dropping them off. Rest in peace, Super Salad. I still think about you. Of course, the mom wasn't born yesterday and knows this is BS. Madeline ignores her mother's attempt to bond over a new TV show together and goes upstairs to her computer. Poor girl is a ball of nerves, anxious over the fact that Sir Leo might be mad at her. When she logs in, she sees that he sent her in-game mail while she was away. Alora, hope you didn't get annoyed at me asking you all those questions yesterday. I guess it's just that I think you're really cool and I was curious about the real life you, but I totally understand what your dad says about not giving out personal info on the web. It's smart, really, and there's no way for me to prove that I really am who I say I am. Anyway, I hope we can still play and you're not mad at me, because I think you rock. Also, your magic comes in way handy with the dragons and stuff. Lols. JK, sorta. Love, Sir Leo. And she writes back, Dear Sir Leo, it's all good. I totally still want to hang out and play. Sorry about last night. Actually, I only closed the screen because my dad came by and he'd have gotten really mad if he saw me talking to someone about real life stuff after he told me not to. He's real anal like that. Anyway, I still want to play as much as possible because I love this game and you're totally fun to play with. Not to mention you're a great tank. Little cloth-robed me would totally be smushed without you. Hee. The next chapter opens up to Madeline's final day of detention. Honestly, I don't have the energy to try and piece this all together. Y'all can do it. This hurts my brain. It's like a word problem in math. Anyway, the history teacher slash sports ball coach has some kind of family emergency and can't babysit the punk rock 16-year-old, so she's stranded at school for another hour until the detention bus comes to take her home. Is that a real thing, by the way? I don't recall my school doing that, but then again, I never had detention because I'm a frickin' angel. Madeline's just walking around when she stumbles upon the school's theater. And there he is. Chad. In tights. Here we get some narration that reveals that Chad isn't like other high school bullies. He's actually smart and sensitive and thoughtful and whatever else Madeline imagines him to be through their scant interactions. So he's rehearsing his lines and his voice sent delicious tingles down to her toes. I am trying so hard not to make this weird. I really am. But imagining a fully 30-something-year-old writing this is throwing me for a loop. Maybe I'm just uncomfortable with the word delicious in relation to human beings, specifically minors. I don't know what it is, but I don't really feel like this subtext should have been added here. It's such a complicated and nuanced topic, this handling of teens and their own proclivities, and I'm honestly not interested in taking any position on it. I just wanted to note that it made me uncomfortable, and I didn't like that phrasing, which Mancusi uses in this novel a lot, by the way. I've just been shielding you from it this whole time. You're welcome. The scene on the stage ends, Madeline goes to leave, but Chad stops her to have a little chat. How sweet. He asks about her manga, how it's coming along, etc. And Madeline does the thing. She reveals what her manga will be titled. Gamer Girl. She starts explaining the story to Chad when Matt, remember him, interrupts this fated meeting. Madeline acknowledges him and then tries to continue her conversation with Chad, but Matt interrupts again, asking if she liked the scene, if she wanted to try out for the drama club, etc. Listen. We all knew someone like this growing up. We all know now that it was rampant, undiagnosed, untreated ADHD. That being said, I was annoyed as fuck on Madeline's behalf. Chad says something interesting here, and we're gonna put a little pin in it for now. When I'm up there on stage, it's just a powerful feeling. It's like I can be anyone. Matt, unable to control himself, pulls an unwilling Madeline on stage to perform the scene she'd just watched Chad do with his female lead. I forget the specifics, honestly, but the important part is that there's a kiss at the end, because of course there is. The part where the two are supposed to kiss comes, they're both awkward about it naturally, and of course, Billy comes in making a big show of his assholery, basically implying it was a great feat to quote act like he was attracted to Freak Girl. Compares her to a troll, whatever. Rude, but tame. Does Chad say anything? Does he stick up for Madeline? Of course not! Madeline books it out of the theater and ends up sulking in the library where, as fate would have it, she notices another girl reading a manga magazine. Sojo Beat. I don't know if Mancusi was trying to avoid copyright stuff, but the real world equivalent is Shoujo Beat. It ran in the US from 2005 to 2009 through Viz Media. The two bond over their love of manga, and Madeline gets her first taste of friendship since moving. Excited, she rushes to Miss Riley's classroom. Thankfully, she's still there. We learn more about this Miss Riley, how she's a self-proclaimed army brat who had to move frequently. They both bond over the idea of feeling like outsiders. She gives Madeline the "it gets better" talk, and yeah, of course it's super shallow, but there's one line that stuck out to me. I know for a fact that had I read this at 16, I would have blown it off, but as an adult, it really rings true. You've got to get to the point where it really doesn't bother you. Stop giving them your power. The two talk some more, and they float around the idea to start an anime club, basically. I'm sure that'll go over so well. Super smooth, like drinking peanut butter. What the fuck? Why did I say it like that? During all of this, Miss Riley mentioned something that set off my foreshadowing senses. She, upon seeing some of Madeline's art, mentions that her boyfriend plays Fields of Fantasy. In fact, she says, it's impossible to drag him away for a date sometimes. She's totally dating her dad. Miss Riley is totally dating Madeline's father. She has to be. You know what Chad said earlier about being in drama and stuff? Theory time. There are three possibilities here. 1, Chad is Sir Leo, Occam's razor. 2, Matt is Sir Leo. It explains his borderline obsession and excitement surrounding Madeline, right? 3, both Chad and Matt are Sir Leo. Stick with me. Remember earlier on when Matt and his buddy were going epic hacker mode in the library to play some games on the computers? What if somehow Chad had been logged in, or they forgot to log out and Chad started playing as Sir Leo after Matt and friend were done? Or Matt and Chad could be cousins or something and are both playing the account at different times without the other knowing? I'm not even sure if any of this makes sense to anyone else but me, honestly. The evidence is connecting in my brain. It all makes sense when I don't think about it at all. And this is an old YA book, so it tracks. Please don't crucify me, actually. YA books are good and important. I don't actually think all YA is trash. Okay, thanks, bye. I still think that the penultimate twist in the story would be if Billy is Sir Leo. I am still holding out for that, low-key. Madeline goes home, straight to her room to do homework. Mom brings her food. They have the same kind of back and forth they've been having for the entirety of this novel, whatever. And after her homework's done, she logs on to Fields of Fantasy. Milady, you have arrived. I have been going mad without thee. I hadn't realized thou would even notice my absence. But of course, I depend on you to do all the damage with your mighty fire spells. Oh, I see how it is. I knew you kept me around for something. In fact, I had been ready to send out a search party for thee, worried perhaps you had run afoul of a deadly swine, or kidnapped by mad goblins, or ravished by leprechauns even, desperate for lucky charms, or I don't know, something else really terrible and bad. I was nearly vanquished by evil mathematics, if you must know. The dreaded homework hound. The most foul beast of all. No kidding. I've had a ton lately myself. Stupid pop quiz today too. Bleh. Ugh, don't even get me started. It's like teachers think we have nothing better to do with our lives than to come home and do more schoolwork. It's because they're old and have no lives and want to punish those who do. That must be it. So how was your day? I mean, besides the homework. Not the greatest, to tell you the truth. I'm sorry. If it makes you feel any better, mine wasn't any better. Aw, what happened? Bleh. It's too long a story to type out. Let's just say I have really lame friends. Why? What did they do? They just think they're so cool, you know? And I think they get off on ruining people's lives. You know how they say, if your friends jumped off of a cliff, would you? Sometimes I think I would. No way. I can't see it. This is why I like talking to you. You have no idea what I'm like IRL. Are you that different? Well, no. I mean, I don't know. It's just, I feel like I can be myself around you, not always feeling like I'm acting, worried what people think about me. It's like everyone thinks I'm this other guy, you know, and I can never be myself because they would think I'm a total freak. Give me an example, you know, like when you're forced to act unlike yourself. Like, I can't tell people I'm into certain things. I like comic books. This makes Madeline super stoked because this Sir Leo guy is also a weirdo like her. You know, I'm really glad I met you, Alora. You're not like any of my real life friends. You're special. Yeah, special needs, right? Oh my God. Again? Holy shit. Ugh, I can't take it. I wish you lived in Farmingdale. I'd totally ask you out. Whoa! No way! How could anyone have seen this coming? As Maddie's reeling with this information, Sir Leo goes all sad boy on her again. Great. Now I've scared you off again. I'm sorry. No, sorry. It's just, I don't know. Not a good idea. Right. I know. I'm just, well, it's so limiting to type online. I want to tell you all this stuff and I just, never mind. It was stupid. Forget it. That kind of thing will never not annoy the hell out of me, honestly. Get up from the computer chair, man. Touch grass. I won't bore you with the rest of the chats here because ultimately they aren't super important. All you need to know is that Madeline's now played the game for so long that she can throw down jargon like it's nothing. For example, I can say the bis for T is eye level 420, so you'll want to grab the Shinryu weapon and the shoes from Eden. Right side for Nin will use fending, not aiming, and a normal person would look at me like I'd sprouted two heads, but epic gamers know what it means, and they also know how very, very wrong it is. So enjoy pain. And then, at the end of the night, when the questing is done and the stars are glimmering in the pixelated sky, they get it on. I'm just kidding. But they do in-game kiss. And you know what they say? If you kiss in-game, you get pregnant in real life. I do love how Madeline goes, quote, "It was clear that our characters were falling in love," as if those characters aren't just self-inserts. Like, girl, stop pretending. You let this sad boy into your heart because you're lonely and lack a father figure. It's okay though. I'm not judging. We've all been there. On Friday, Madeline's putting up poster ads for her anime club and Billy approaches in the most Billy way possible. "What you doing, freak girl?" You know, looking back, maybe I was too harsh on Mancusi for her portrayal of this Billy guy. One tiny detail mentioned here completely solidifies that this character was actually the most realistic one in the entire book. Honestly, if she'd mentioned this factoid earlier, I wouldn't have gone in so hard on how stupid his insults were. Because bro is wearing a Bruins jersey. He's a Bruins fan. I'm kidding. Mostly. Anyway, the exchange that comes after this is so weird, and honestly it had me believing more and more that Billy is Sir Leo theory. What does it look like, Brainiac? I shot back, even surprising myself with the force of my jab. I'll give you 3 guesses. No, wait, don't strain yourself. Wouldn't want to hurt your head. I waved a flyer in his face, channeling my inner mean girl. See these? I'm hanging them on a wall. I spoke the last part slowly, as if addressing a dim-witted child, which wasn't far off the mark now that I thought about it. With tape, I added, waving the dispenser. You know, sticky, sticky. A thrill tickled my stomach as Billy took a step back, a confused look on his formerly arrogant face. Yeah, got that, Billy retorted. He ripped down the flyer I just put up and studied it with narrowed eyes. But what on earth is a manja club? Does that mean vampire in Swahili or something? Funny. No, it doesn't. But I wouldn't expect your pea brain to know any Japanese, so don't feel too bad. Ew, you're so smart, freak girl. I wish I could be a nerd like you and start a manga club at school. It's manga. Whatever, he said, though I noticed his face had grown kind of red. You still haven't told me what manga is, he reminded me, leaning against a locker. Billy looked down at the flyer. Oh, it's lame-o comic books, isn't it? Brilliant deduction. I clapped my hands for him, though manga is a Japanese art form, so it's not like we're covering Superman or anything. So who do you expect to join your little geeky comic book club? He demanded. Last I checked, we don't have any Japanese students here. Anna Dustin, why is that in italics? That's fucked. It sounds like a slur when he's saying it. Anyway, do you live under a total rock? I asked incredulously. Have you ever been to a bookstore? A library? Manga's huge. Ton of American kids read it. Billy's face darkened. Evidently, I'd struck a nerve. I don't waste my time in bookstores, he retorted. Libraries are for chumps. Right. I gave him my sweetest smile. It's okay, Billy. Really. Shut up, freak girl. You're stupid. You're a freak. No one likes you. They all think you're a loser. In psychology, there's this term called displacement, in which one behavior, generally regarded as harmful, I guess, is kind of subbed out for something more acceptable. Think smokers using minty toothpicks or suckers to replace their hand-to-mouth habit when they try to quit. That kind of thing. And the behavior doesn't necessarily have to be widely regarded as harmful either. In the world of psychology, the individual's perception or interpretation of situations matters a lot. So if Billy perceives being a nerd as harmful and unacceptable, it would make sense that he would rail so hard against other nerds and take up that bully mantle, decrying any and all connection to even remotely nerdy or geeky media. But is that too complex for this kind of narrative? I guess we'll see. So, Wednesday comes around, the day of the anime club's inaugural meeting. Madeline's racked with nerves and is convinced that no one will show, but you know how the adage goes. Build it and they will come, or whatever. Pretty soon, the fellow weebs come rolling in, each with their own classic tropes, such as cat ear girl who talks way too much and way too fast. The fat art kid. Don't think you were being sly by calling him Stocky Marie, really. The goth girl, her name is Black Raven, and this becomes important later. Trust me. The emo kid who tries too hard, Matt and friend, and Chad? The freaks and geeks respond to this boy's presence by practically hissing at him. The bullied become bullies? It tracks. And honestly, I feel really bad for this Chad guy. Social ostracization is brutal, and he didn't even say anything. He just kind of existed in the doorway for a couple seconds. I know that the whole point is to illustrate the point I just made. I also know that there's some part of the reader that's supposed to be inwardly smug about this bully bystander getting what he, quote, deserves. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't face the consequences of their actions or inactions in this case, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just too community-pilled to feel like any of it was justified. Madeline follows Chad into the hallway to talk, and despite this guy being immediately rejected by the anime club attendees, he keeps a surprisingly level head for a high school teen boy. Seeing my opening, I jumped up from my seat and headed over. At the very least, I could find out what he wanted, apologize for the other's bad behavior maybe. Chad! I called out to him as I reached the hall. He stopped and turned around. Hey, he said, stuffing his hands in his pockets. Don't mind them, I said finally, gesturing into the library. They were just teasing. I finished lamely, losing all my nerve. Chad scuffed the toe of his sneaker against the cement hall floor. Whatever, he muttered. I'm sure I deserved it in some way or another. He looked up at me. How's it going in there anyway? Looks like you had a good turnout. I saw your posters around the school, he continued, and I figured I'd come see what it was all about. Is it like an art club or something? Do you guys draw comics? Naturally, Chelsea, Chelsea, am I right? Interrupts this exchange to drag Chad away to go do popular people stuff, I guess. And Chad actually sorta kinda stands up for himself, if you consider mumbling an unintelligible shut up under your breath standing up for oneself. It's progress nonetheless, and far be it from me to diminish any kind of personal forward motion, even if it seems silly. After the club's done meeting, Madeline goes home. Her mother greets her in the worst way I can imagine a mother greeting a daughter ever. What's wrong with you? You're smiling. I've already stood on this soapbox, so I'll keep it brief. Do not punish the behaviors you want to see. Literally, yeah, I get it. It does what it's supposed to, illustrate a shift in characterization. Cool. But I hated every word of that exchange. Little Emily wants Madeline to watch her perform some kind of dance. I guess that's just like little sister stuff. I don't know. I don't have a frame of reference for it. She has to do it outside though, because of all of the glass unicorns in Gam Gam's house, except it's raining. Do I even need to continue this? We're smart enough to know how this ends, right? She performs indoors, breaks a bunch of stuff as Gam Gam comes home. Gam Gam has some kind of psychotic break, muttering, my babies, over and over, referring to the broken figurines and not her grandchildren. Naturally. Mom's disappointed in Maddie after she fesses up that dancing inside was her idea, not Emily's. I think you've done enough, just go type beat. Mom of the year. Madeline and Emily go into her room, and she works on her manga while the little one plays Disney games on her computer. While she's drawing and daydreaming, her mind starts to get away from her in one of the most relatable cases of doomsdaying I've ever read. I wistfully traced my finger along my drawing of Sir Leo. What was he like in real life? I was dying to know. Was it worth the risk of meeting him, knowing that a real-life encounter could end our online friendship forever? Maybe I'd sign into Fields of Fantasy to see if he was online. I missed him badly and wanted nothing more than to hang out with him and play the game, lose myself in the virtual world for a few hours. But sadly, my dashing knight in shining armor was nowhere to be found. A wave of disappointment washed over me. Where was he? What was he up to? Stuck doing homework, eating a late dinner with his family? Or was he out and about, hanging with his friends? Or worse, with another girl? The idea made my stomach twist into a knot. I hadn't really given much thought to the fact that Sir Leo could very well have a girlfriend. Sure, he never mentioned one, but then again, we didn't talk all that much about our personal lives. In fact, I had no reason to believe he wasn't totally dating some hot, popular chick in real life. A cheerleader, maybe. Or the student body president. Some blonde airhead who didn't understand him at all. She didn't know his secret love for role-playing or comic books. She didn't know the sweet, sensitive soul well hidden behind the mask he wore to school. She didn't know the real Sir Leo, the boy grappling with who he was and who he wanted to be. And yet, she had him. I thunked my head against my desktop, completely depressed. I tried to remind myself that I was projecting. This hypothetical girlfriend likely didn't even exist. After all, Sir Leo had talked about meeting me in real life, and he certainly didn't seem the type who would cheat on his girlfriend. More than likely, he was single. For now. He could, right at this very moment, be sharing a first kiss with a girl he just met, a girl he would end up falling in love with. He'd start doing everything she wanted to do, which of course meant giving up video games, since she'd be jealous of every moment he spent away from her. They'd end up getting married and having children, and they'd throw lavish parties where he'd bring up his old days as a comic book loving geek who played video games. And his friends, stockbrokers and lawyers of course, would all laugh and relentlessly tease him, but all in good fun. And maybe he'd remember, as the subject changed back to sports, the girl he used to play with, the one who sat beside him on a virtual mountaintop watching the sunset with him as he bared his soul. But of course he wouldn't bring her up because his wife would get annoyed and grumpy, and he really didn't want to deal with that. So he'd jump into the sports conversation and forget all about Alora all over again. I know it seems silly, like really silly, but it tracks. Madeline clearly has abandonment issues. She's been all but abandoned by her father, who it seems like she's worshipped since she was little, and her old friends. At this point, I'd forgotten she'd even had friends from her previous school. And at such a formative age, when you're figuring out who you are, what you stand for, and the type of person you want to be, having your people to lean on is so crucial to navigating these sticky situations. Maddie couldn't even count on her own mother. Realistically, she only had Sir Leo. It makes sense that she would be scared of losing him too. Anyway, next day at school, Madeline comes upon Black Raven, I told you she'd be important, in the hallway. Hey, Blackie, she says. Blackie! Her friend's name is Black Raven, and instead of, I don't know, using Raven as a nickname, she lands on Blackie? Where in the hell was the editor? Did this novel even have one? I'm not gonna sit here and like clutch my pearls and cry racism on behalf of anyone. It's really an interesting choice though, when taking into consideration the cultural context of the US's first Black president being elected the same year that this book was published. I'm not canceling Mancusi. I'm not saying she's a malignant racist or anything. I'm just saying the optics suck. Madeline and Raven bond over how sucky and undiverse Farmingdale is. How rich. Then they agree to go downtown after school to check out the comic book shop's latest selection of manga. When the day's over, they meet up and Raven introduces Madeline to her other friends who also call her Blackie. I'm trying so hard not to make this into a big deal. I'm not trying to jump at shadows here, but who greenlit this? How? So the group invites her to sit at lunch with them so she can show them her art. It's a super exciting moment for Madeline, and understandably so. She and Raven then go off to the downtown place, blasting My Chemical Romance and flipping off the preps the whole way there. I made that last bit up. Not the MCR, that's actually canon, but the bird flipping. While at the comic book store, they run into Matt, who's looking into Full Metal Alchemist thanks to the Weeb Club, and then all three of them go grab some sodies at the diner down the road. Guess who's also there? Chad. Madeline sees him sitting at a booth further down reading something, but she isn't able to get a good look at it. Felt out of place to mention, but I figured that made it important. So, we'll see. Her friends start dogging on him amongst themselves, and when Maddie defends him, they start to tease her for liking the boy. Teenager stuff. There's a small interaction with Gladys, the waitress, diner lady. Even the diner lady calls Raven Blackie, by the way. Do you want to know? I counted every single instance of Blackie in this book. Do you want to know how many there were? 22. We don't even meet this character until halfway through the book. 22 times Blackie was used as a nickname, and it was not challenged. It was not taken out. Are you fucking kidding me? Sorry. I got kind of carried away. Raven asks Gladys, the waitress diner lady, to tell Chad that he can join the three of them in some weird game of matchmaker telephone or something. Chad actually joins them, and Raven plays matchmaker by getting him to sit by Madeline. Matt completely ruins the vibes, though, by calling out Chad on being a duplicitous bystander, which, yeah, I'm not mad about it. I know earlier I mentioned being community pilled, and that's not a joke. I think that humans are flawed and that behavior that harms the community should be challenged. Vilifying the guy as a group like they all did at the anime club meeting wasn't cool, but this more private discussion was a better way to address the guy's ambivalence. For teenagers, the whole conversation is insanely productive. I know that it had to be for the plot and all that, but I don't know. I think it could serve as a good example from all sides on how to approach certain conflicts. Maybe. Chad agrees with them, owns up to being not a great guy, and vows to step in next time something happens with the haters. Before long, Matt shoots up, saying that he has to go because he's got a date, an online date, and he's in LOVE. Coincidentally, Madeline also has a date soon. Online. With Sir Leo. This realization sends Miss Thang reeling, and she leaves with a quickness. I'm assuming she walked home, or maybe this fictitious New England suburb has amazing public transit, because Raven doesn't drive her back. Maddie's just kind of up and leaves. Oh, you thought you were going to get any information on the date? Wrong. The next chapter opens up with Mom being angry on the phone. We find out the girls have been waiting for their father to pick them up for 2 hours, and he still hasn't shown. He's sick, he says. He's tired and doesn't feel well. He can't take the girls snowboarding. He'd promised them he would, and Madeline was excited because it meant she'd be able to spend time with her friends from her old school in Boston. She and little Emily go to the rooms. A little later on, Mom comes in and breaks the news that Maddie already knew. She has to go to work, so she offers to take the two sisters out for a nice dinner later on. Maddie lays in bed pondering things. Her father, her old friends, her new friends, Sir Leo, and we get this exquisite piece of nice guy fodder. I didn't want Sir Leo to be just some random, funny, smart, interesting guy. I wanted Sir Leo to be my knight in shining armor. A guy who made my heart pitter-patter like crazy when I laid eyes on him, like Chad did. I wanted to swoon like the heroines in Grandma's romance novels were always doing. I wanted to close my eyes and feel his sweet breath, blah, 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 whatever. That wasn't going to happen with Matt. It just wasn't. Still, an inner voice nagged, "Don't you think you're being a little unfair? Sir Leo's been your loyal and faithful friend for a while now." She resolves herself to face Sir Leo. When searching for his name, she finds that he's not online. But her father is. Dad? "Oh, hi, sweetie. How's it going?" "I'm fine. You know, for being stuck at home and not snowboarding." Yeah. Sorry about that. I wasn't feeling well. I heard Mom say you were sick." "Right. Been thrown up all morning." "Ugh. Way TMI, Dad. Well, did you want to play then? I mean, since we can't hang out in person? Sorry, hun, not right now. I'm supposed to do this huge raid with a bunch of guys. We're going to infiltrate the enemy city of Calgar. Oh, sorry, sweetie. We've been planning this for weeks. Planning it for weeks? I'm not gonna lie, the next little bit of righteous fury was so satisfying to read. Finally, all of the pieces had clicked in place and Madeline understood. I remember when that realization hit me in regard to other people who used to be a part of my life. I was well into my 20s, however, but that's neither here nor there. I wasn't a gamer girl as a minor. In fact, I didn't play any sort of games until 2018. Madeline vents this anger by drawing her character murdering people. Well, not really. It's for her manga. The character Alora returns to the real world and shoots all her lightning powers at all the bullies who run away, of course, not die, because this is PG and murder is wrong. Eventually, she snaps out of her furious scribbling and, realizing she has free will, asks her grandmother to take her and her sister to the slopes. When they get there, her friends are so excited to see her after a semester of blowing her off. Weird, but okay. The whole group hits the slopes while Gam Gam stays behind and reads 50 Shades of Grey or something by the fire. Later, on the ski lift, Madeline and Caitlin have a heart-to-heart where she reveals her involvement in the manga club, and Caitlin seems happy for her in the way that a 16-year-old could be, I guess. I'm so happy for you, Maddie. You seem much better too. Less, I don't know, emo or something. When the girls return home, Madeline gets on the game and finds, shocker, that her father's still around. He has time to hang out now that his rating is done for the day. Dad of the Year makes Mother of the Year look like Mother fucking Teresa. Thankfully, Madeline ignores this bum and reaches out to Sir Matt Chad Billy. However, even that doesn't bring her much joy. Madeline begins thinking about the circumstances surrounding her dream man and comes to the conclusion that maybe he wasn't Matt. After all, it was hard to remember he was really Matt behind the character. Well, maybe it was Matt. I still wasn't positive, of course. For all I knew, the similarities could be a total coincidence. After all, Farmingdale was a popular name for a town. It's not, but okay. He could be from Farmingdale, New York, not New Hampshire, or Farmingdale, Maine, or Farmingdale. Okay, hold on. So, Mancusi knew about all those other real Farmingdales in real states and chose to ignore them. This goes to show she did some amount of research on the setting of this freaking book. Did she choose to ignore it? Is there some hidden secret Farmingdale in New Hampshire that we don't know about? Mancusi, explain yourself. Anyway, Madeline's revelation was quickly shattered by Sir Leo mentioning the new manga club at his school. Oh, I totally forgot to tell you. They started a manga club at my school. Perhaps she could still live in some realm of plausible deniability until he adds insult to injury by mentioning her by name. This new girl at our school named Maddie started it. She's really cool. Into manga, just like you. Dejected, she logs off. Almost immediately after, her dad calls and she answers the phone to confront him. He admits how shitty it was to blow off his 2 daughters, he has 2 by the way, to play some video game. He promises to do something really special with them next weekend. Any bets on him following through with it? Come next Wednesday, the manga club turns out to be a huge success, and by week 2, they're running out of chairs to use in the library. This naturally makes Madeline uncomfortable because she's supposed to give everyone a lecture on how to draw manga. How inspired. She tries backing out, her new buddies won't let her, etc. Right when she's about to begin her presentation, Sir Chad shows up. She gets all nervous, but he gives her a thumbs up. With some extra encouragement from Raven, she finally takes the stage, as it were, so to speak, and we learn not only how to draw manga, but also her last name. Star. 2 R's. You have got to be kidding me. Anyway, before moving on, I want to note that there was a line in this chapter that made me go, Quote, I glanced over at Matt, who was chatting merrily with Ed. He's gay. He has to be gay, right? Consider, he joined in on Raven making light fun of Maddie being in love with Chad, and now he isn't totally enraptured by her presence. If a teenage guy was super desperately in love with a girl, I couldn't imagine him looking at anyone else. So, is Sir Leo Chad or Billy? Billy isn't in drama, not that we know of, but he did show up to the auditorium that one day. Had he been arriving to practice? And it isn't like he's unaware of the manga club. Remember the interaction between him and Maddie in the hall when she was putting up posters? The next day, she's taking her chemistry midterm, grateful that she'd studied a lot more as a result of avoiding fields of fantasy. Sir Billy, though, sits beside her and begins harassing her for answers, despite the Mr. Teacher telling everyone to be quiet. I'm sure we all know where this is going. She tells him she got your mother for question 3, ignores his pleas of, come on, you have to help me or I'll get kicked out of sports, and goes in for the kill when he breaches her bubble and tries to snatch her test. The commotion alerts Mr. Teacher, and Sir Billy immediately pins it on Madeline, accusing her of copying. When she looks behind her to see who would be able to vouch for her side, she sees the haters. Chelsea and Lucy back Sir Billy up, and Sir Chad stays silent. Mr. Teacher tells Madeline to go to the principal's office, that he was going to recommend expelling her. In desperation, she seeks the aid of her other peers, then the aid of Chad. And Chad backs her up. Surprisingly. Poor Chad's dealt with after class accordingly by Billy, sporting a fresh black eye in the hall. Madeline stops him to inquire about his health and thank him for being, quote, her knight in shining armor. Ooh. Sir Chad pulls the you should see the other guy shtick. As Madeline's about to tell him something, Matt starts calling out her name down the hallway. Chad leaves for his next class, leaving Madeline a captive audience to whatever Matt's about to ramble about. She tells him they need to talk privately and finds the pair in an empty classroom. In the middle of the school day? What kind of overfunded, underpopulated school is this? The two sit down and she decides to just come out with it. Matt has no idea what she's talking about and tells her he's gay. I was right! It turns out his online date had been with another boy from Miami. His hot date was just a red herring after all. Well played. Well played, Mancusi. Madeline can't help herself. She starts spiraling, wondering who Sir Leo was if it wasn't Matt. Matt offers to be her little sleuth in exchange for information. She lists off what she knows about the guy. He's in drama, likes comics, joined the manga club, and his dad works at a bank. Matt confirms it's Chad. Sir Chad. Their fathers work together at the same bank. However, that didn't exactly completely destroy the possibility of Sir Billy from my mind. Billy and Chad had been friends since they were children. Chances are their parents knew one another, perhaps from the same workplace. And I mean, we all know how every town has that one employer who hires everybody. There's still a chance. I refuse to let Mancusi pull a fast one on me. That being said, there was only 35 pages left in the book. But any reader knows that that's a lot of book remaining. Later on, Maddie's finishing up the cover of her manga and talking to Miss Riley about her dilemma. Miss Riley gives her words of encouragement and tells Madeline that even though her online love interest is part of the haters, he might just be caught up in the wrong crowd with no idea of how to break free from the chains that bind him. And then she says something funny. Quote, as long as it's not Billy Henderson himself, I think you may have a chance. I developed a new theory pretty quickly, albeit a shaky one. What if Billy was Sir Leo, knew Madeline was Alora, and wanted to try and get her expelled so that he had what he thought of as a chance to foster their budding romance away from the public eye of the school? His reputation would remain the same, and he would get the girl. Again, it was shaky, but I could see a mildly stupid young boy coming up with that solution. And now it's time for Madeline to face her fears and confront Sir Leo. When she gets home, she logs in and... Greetings, Sir Leo. I wanted to talk to you about something. Can we meet somewhere? Sure. So, before we go questing, I wanted to talk. It's been so fun playing with you. And I'm sorry I've seemed weirded out every time you ask me personal stuff. It's not that I don't want to tell you things. I felt weird about the IRL versus online thing. So I've changed my mind. I would like to meet up with you. Cool. On a date with a hot elf chick. Rock on. So when do you want to get together? Before we figure that out, I want you to know that I've figured out who you are. We go to the same school, actually. LOL. Who am I then? Chad Murray? LOL, yes. You are right. So who are you? Maddie Starr. OMG, you're a freak girl. Sir Leo laughs. LOL, LOL, LOL. No way. And here I thought you were some totally hot chick, not the gothy looking witch that goes to our school. That's just too hilarious. I can't believe you actually thought you'd have a chance with someone like Chad Murray. LOL, LOL, LOL. Ouch. Okay. Another theory, because this is super common in romances. The third act breakup. Obviously, this whole encounter seemed very uncharacteristic of the couple's previous chats. I figured immediately that this had to be a case of Billy hijacking Chad's computer while at his place. No parentheses around the OOC chatter and mentioning himself in the third person. It had to be Billy Trojan horsing Sir Leo, but I guess we'll see. Poor Maddie is heartbroken, understandably so. I know that being an adult makes it easy for us to kind of hand wave this sort of experience, especially in poorly written form, but I'm sure we all know what it feels like to be rejected and humiliated like that. My heart kind of broke for the girl. Poor thing. The next day, she resolves herself to keep her chin up, as it were, and I found that to be a very adult decision of her. Not long after, though, she runs into a problem. She can't find her art, her submission to the manga contest. She figures she'd left it at school and books it there. Raven greets her as she steps off the bus, and she doesn't look well. Something's wrong. Raven asks if Madeline left copies of her art at school. Madeline answers she thinks she did. Raven drills deeper, insistent on figuring out if they were copies or not. We know where this is going because we are smart. Someone, and I'm not going to name names, got a hold of Madeline's sketchbook, defaced her work, and hung them up all around the school. Madeline sees all of her work strung about, completely ruined. One look at Chad, who's having a heated conversation with Billy, and she turns tail and runs home. You know who else is home? Her mom. They finally have their heart-to-heart, all mushy and sweet. It's the first time in this book that the mother speaks to Madeline as a person rather than an inconvenience. She reveals why she left their father. Spoiler alert, he wasn't unfaithful. He was just a child, and mother had no desire to be a single mom of 3. Maddie opens up about everything except her online romance, and her mom makes an interesting suggestion. Go to the library on Sunday, explain what happened, and ask for an extension. Honestly, it's such a mom thing to suggest. I remember my mother suggesting that I show a program of the Christmas concert that I was in at church to my choir teacher so I could get extra credit in a class I'd already had an A in. I mean, what can I say? Most mothers ultimately do want their daughters to succeed, no matter how unsound the advice may seem. So Madeline goes and does just that. As she's waiting to be called in, who should show up but Chad Murray? She tries to get away, he follows. When Madeline's cornered at a dead end in some sort of weird hallway with no doors, she has no choice but to hear the explanation we knew all along. It was Billy she'd last talked to online, not Chad. He did, in fact, take over Chad's character after being left alone at his house. Aren't we such geniuses? I mean, I'm the one who did all the thinking. That's so mean. He continues explaining himself, revealing that he, quote, told them all off and reported them to the principal, who gifted them a lovely suspension. Madeline offhandedly inquires why she should believe him, and he pulls out a printed and bound copy of her manga. Well, it isn't quite hers anymore. Not just. Turns out, all the manga club kids came together and helped redraw the ruined pages. After only one drawing lesson, no less. Damn. These kids must be talented, huh? Chad tells Madeline that the whole club had come to Boston to cheer her on. How freaking sweet is that? Totally unrealistic, but come on. You can't deny that it makes your heart swell a little. And then this loser has to bring up the unicorn sweatshirt again, admitting that that was the only time he thought that she was uncool. Stupid brat. Kids these days would kill to slay as hard as she did that first day. He swiftly redeems himself, I guess, by asking permission to kiss her. Anyway, Madeline wins the competition with the help of her friends, and everyone goes to an expensive steakhouse to celebrate. I guess she isn't going to use the money for tuition in Boston anymore because she's got Sir Chad by her side. Everyone's having fun, life is good again, even her parents are getting along. What a happy ending, huh? Here are my thoughts. I don't think Madeline is a pick-me in the way critics make her out to be. This kind of phase, and yes, it is a phase mom, is typical of girls at this age. I've seen some discussion surrounding this idea before, and so I'll try to do it justice. When someone is surrounded with messaging about who they're supposed to be, who they're expected to become from birth, they can become quite overwhelmed once they reach adolescence. With a newfound sense of freedom that occurs with having access to phones, social media, cars, etc., young kids at that age begin to realize that they have options when it comes to who they want to be. They don't have to turn into whoever their parents envisioned for themselves. Yet, at the same time, they still live under their guardians' roofs. This push and pull between individualism and dependency can generate a great deal of cognitive dissonance, especially in young girls who were taught that liking typically feminine things was the safest way to exist. For example, I was a tall kid and I had to wear boys' jeans when my legs grew too long for the styles available to girls. I was bullied relentlessly for it, and I didn't even like wearing those jeans. It was embarrassing enough that I was being made fun of for a choice I had no control over, but imagine how mortifying it would be if a girl decided she liked those pants and wore them with confidence, expecting support from her friends, only to be met with ridicule and humiliation. It's embarrassing. And some scientists would argue it's downright painful, physically. Literally. It makes sense that a teen existing in this weird limbo of be yourself but not like that would decide to lean heavily into being different, and many of them do. I sure did. Decrying pink girly things, pretending like I wasn't interested in boys and desperate for a boyfriend like every other girl seemed to have at that point in high school, acting like I was too mature to bother being a teen, judging haters despite being one myself. I did all of it, and so did Madeline. Wanting to be different at a formative age is not a crime. In fact, it's completely normal. Does this mean the child in question isn't making an ass of themselves? No, not in the slightest. However, making an ass of oneself isn't a crime either, and especially so when they're still a minor. And let's not forget to mention that Madeline's belief that she's better than other people because of her uniqueness is incredibly short-lived. Early on in the novel, she recognizes that she and Caitlin were being judgmental in the same way that she claimed the Aber zombies were, and from that moment on, we only see her judgment being applied to those who have actually wronged her, like Billy and company. Aside from that, Madeline's only crime is just being different. And although she's a fictional character at the end of the day, screaming about Madeline's being a pick-me just because she's participating in alternative activities is a bit like the pot calling the kettle black. We as readers should keep in mind that characters don't know what kind of story they're in, and without a major character flaw, there will be no story. Expecting them to act accordingly doesn't lend itself to valid criticism. Perhaps the issue is just where the criticism is directed, because I have several. I think that the way Mancusi wrote Madeline was incredibly cliche. The whole novel was a cliche. It really was, but this was written for young teens in 2008. It's understandable to look at this all the way in 2025 and point fingers and say this story sucked. However, considering the target audience of this novel and the other media available to young teens at the time, it makes sense. But that doesn't mean it couldn't have been better. There were a couple threads of the story that I think would have made it juicier yet still age appropriate. I'll admit making Sir Leo Madeline's father would not have been a good move, and neither would making Madeline's father a cheater. If this was an adult romance, sure, maybe, but really, if this was supposed to be a book written for adults, this novel really wouldn't have existed anyway. I think that if Miss Riley or Lady Adriana had wound up dating Madeline's father, it would have opened the door for even more complex themes like betrayal, suspicion, navigating life with parents who are actively dating, stuff like that. But if the goal was to keep the narrative short, as I'm assuming is the case since Mancusi was given the Quick Picks for Reluctant Young Adult Readers Award for this book in 2009, it makes sense why this kind of thread wasn't followed. Perhaps if she wanted to make a series, that narrative would be the next step, but to my knowledge, she hasn't done that. For me, the foreshadowing was far too obvious. It was pretty ham-fisted for my taste, and I think that even back in 2008, Mancusi could have done a better job. I think that a lot of adults writing YA fiction forget that teens aren't stupid. They don't need their hand held, and they don't need these glaringly out-of-place observations by the narrator to achieve the sense of suspicion the author wants. But maybe I'm overestimating teens' ability to infer things. After all, everyone keeps hearing about this epidemic of illiteracy in the US. Plus, I'm 27. I've been going at this for decades, and maybe comparing my abilities to a young person's is like making a toddler compete against a NASCAR driver in the Indy 500. And another thing, this is admittedly personal preference, and I understand how this might appeal to a younger audience. Maybe. But stop using brand names in your books. There might actually be a day where those brands no longer exist and they are no longer culturally relevant. And God forbid someone in the year 3000 or whatever reads Dunkin' Donuts and has no idea what you're talking about. On top of all of that, deciding to use some real life brands and not others is also really annoying. Sojo Beat? I still can't tell if that was a typo or if Mancusi was trying to avoid a copyright battle. If it was the former and the typo made it through several rounds of editing, then that's even more unforgivable. An author should always be familiar with the subject they're trying to write about. Sojo Beat is the perfect example why. In making such a glaring mistake regarding a hallmark of the subculture you're trying to reach, you risk alienating them instead. If this was due to copyright conflicts, then Mancusi should have scrapped the brand naming altogether. I can't imagine megacorporations would pay someone to name their brand in a book. As everyone knows, whether intuitively or not, the decline in extracurricular reading post Y2K would give this sort of literary sponsorship a terrible, terrible return on investment. I think the biggest faux pas of Mancusi's writing, aside from deciding Blackie was an acceptable nickname, is how PG the bullying was. I understand that she might have wanted to keep it that way because of overbearing, potentially religious mothers, but at the end of the day, these bullies aren't very convincing most of the time. Yes, destroying Madeline's manga and defacing it and stringing the corpse of her creativity all over the school is downright terrible. But aside from that, Freak Girl a bad drawing. Madeline even bullied herself in a way by implying she looked, quote, special needs. Making the main character more mean to herself than her adversaries doesn't make this type of struggle interesting or believable. Additionally, where's the cyberbullying? MySpace was huge in 2008, and according to social media veterans, it was a cesspool of toxicity. Mancusi, in my opinion, missed a big opportunity by confining Madeline's torment to the walls of her school. And I mean, yeah, she had other types of torment, what with her parents' divorce and all, but I don't know. I can't help but feel like this was simply an aspect Mancusi didn't consider because she was recalling her own experience in high school, which would be the mid to late 80s, before the advent of social media and smartphones. I'm not faulting her for being old or whatever. There isn't anything wrong with that, obviously, but again, I'm ramming up against this issue where I feel like she doesn't care to do much external research on the topics she included in this book. And hey, this book is for like 12 to 16-year-olds. Maybe she decided that this extra research wasn't necessary to make a book that demographic would enjoy, and she was probably right, but in my opinion, those seemingly minuscule details are where narratives really shine. All in all, Gamer Girl is what I would call effective. It does what it's meant to do for the audience it's written for, and that's great. Despite my gripes, at the end of the day, the themes are incredibly appropriate for teenagers. I even have to give kudos to Mancusi for the way she so expertly laid out the conflict between mother and daughter. Out of all of it, that aspect of the book was my favorite. The ways in which I believe it could have been better are almost entirely subjective and through the lens of an adult who's been a bookworm since before first grade and has a vested interest in literature. I try to be as fair as possible when handling works that weren't made for me. Maybe that's the marketing student in me, but I will always maintain that it's not productive to analyze anything as if it was made to cater to you, because it most likely wasn't. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it, even though it took a lot longer than I anticipated. If you, stranger on the internet, have any book suggestions, let me know. And don't forget to like and subscribe, shameless plug, if you feel so inclined. And that kind of rhymed. Thanks for sticking around. I'll see you next time.